you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another episode of All About Mechanics. Now today is going to be the Lair of Maarselok. We are going to use the same kind of structure as we usually do with one tank, one healer, one magic DPS and one stamina DPS so that no role is left out. Every single dungeon video is exactly the same in that respect where all roles are relevant and this is going to be no different. Now this can be quite challenging but don't worry, we've got you covered. All the mechanics are going to be shown and we're going to demonstrate the hard mode of course as well. Here we go. Now, Lair of Maarselok is actually quite a large dungeon. We start at the very bottom of a mountain and we have to go all the way up, chasing a dragon all the way through. So yes, of course, spoiler alert, there is a dragon in here. Now, there are lots of very familiar enemies in this dungeon that you may have seen throughout the game before, but the same kind of rules apply. Make your tank go first, keep up as much area of effect as possible while they're putting in all the ads, and make sure you interrupt the stuff that's channeling. To start with, we've got a few creatures, a couple of bears and cats and stuff, nothing really too stressful, but as a DPS or healer, do not stand in the faces of the bear, because if they do try and heavy attack you, they will kill you. The first few pulls kind of sets the tone for the rest of the dungeon. The first ones are kind of melee stuff. Then you'll get spiders and wasps and all that kind of stuff that the tank will have to pull in because some of them can hit from range. And then you'll start seeing some of the more difficult stuff. Then you'll see them all together, but we'll show more of that as we go. Pay attention to the spiders, by the way. They do fire off projectiles, so make sure that obviously you are in the heals. And if they do start channeling, they're trying to feed off of a dead body. They need interrupting, otherwise they will heal. That's pretty much the same throughout the entire game. Most spiders tend to do that, so just be aware of it, otherwise it can be a bit annoying, especially if you're in a pug or a group that's got lesser DPS, because you could be there for quite some time. Amongst the ads, of course, there are going to be some rather large enemies which do need to be paid attention to. You mustn't get caught by them as a DPS or a healer, and the tank must grab them as soon as possible. If you don't, you are going to die. There's no forgiveness for it whatsoever. There are enemies in here that will not allow you to block as a DPS or healer because you simply don't have the health or mitigation to be able to counter it with a block. So you have to be very, very careful. Again, let your tank always go first. This particular pull, very straightforward. It's kind of a mix of the last two. Spiders and bears, bring them in all together, keep your AoE up, you should be just fine. Remember to interrupt the spiders if they try and feed off of anything. Not too stressful, basic ad pulls. The usual false sense of security stuff that Finn tends to put into the dungeons, where you think you're absolutely fine and then you get greeted with a massive mechanic. But we're still on ads. Lots of ad pulls all the way up. We've now got new enemies. We've got these Spriggans, which do need to be interrupted because they can cast nasties and you don't want to get caught by them. They can either heal or actually buff up other stuff. So make sure you obviously get those down quickly. If you do see them channeling, again, make sure you interrupt them. You'll notice between ad pulls there is actually quite a lot of space. This dungeon is rather large. There's a lot of ground to cover. And that just means that during the speed runs, in these massive gaps between ads, just make sure you pick up the pace a little bit. The speed run's actually very straightforward. It's not too stressful at all. You're not really going to struggle for 1 or 2 minutes or so. You'll probably finish it with about 5 minutes to spare on a standard run. But the gaps in between the ads are pretty huge. So don't hang back for too long because that's where you waste your time. That ad pull was pretty straightforward. You've seen one of those already. But we're about to encounter a boss. This first boss is a bit of a pug killer because people don't pay attention to basic mechanics. Now, if you are relatively new to this game, I would be surprised if you're looking at this particular dungeon, but maybe you are. You may want to brush up on your basic mechanics. So there's a video in the description for blocks and interrupts. That's very important for this particular fight. Not so much the blocks, actually, more the interrupt mechanic. But be aware that there is a part in this fight where you can die rapidly as a DPS or a healer if you don't pay attention, and we'll get to that in a moment. But the main focus of this fight, the tank should hold the boss in the middle of the room, and Selene is a problem for the rest of the group to deal with. She will dart around the room, she'll cast nasty effects, and she must be interrupted at certain points in time, in which case, if you don't do that quick enough, everyone's going to die. So the bear's quite straightforward. Nasty heavy attacks towards the tank. All the tank really has to do is turn it away from the group and block it. Watch out for these effects, because if you don't block them or get out of the way, you'll be flung into the air. And when she puts a cone on one player, all they need to do is stand there and either heal or block through it. Now, she will teleport around the room, as you can see at the back there. She's just now been interrupted. If you don't interrupt that mechanic, you are dead. Again, circles on the ground. Stay out or just block it. If you get pinned in the air or thrown up into the air, it's not really too much of a problem as long as you recover quickly and break free. Watch Selene at all times. Your group's main focus, apart from hitting that bear, should be Selene. When the bear dies, get away from that boss. The tank can stay there and grab a taunt, but everyone needs to get away from the spider, because the spider can actually one-shot a DPS or a healer by just picking one of them as it spawns, and there's nothing the tank can do about it. If the boss comes down and hits someone before the tank has applied the taunt, which is very common, then you're screwed. So once the bear dies, everybody move away. The tank can grab the spider and turn it away from everybody. Watch out for the heavy attack. You must block it as a tank or you're dead. In the meantime, follow the mechanics for Selene. Stay out of stupid, stand still if you've got the cone on you, and the tank needs to bring in the new add spiders to deal with as well. By the way, if you have low DPS, don't panic. You can bring all the spiders in and deal with them in area of effect, but the longer you take, the more spiders you will get. Disclaimer, by the way, DPS and healers, you cannot block that spider's heavy attack. If you try, you will die. So a very well-timed dodge roll is the only way you can survive it. Above all, your main concern throughout that fight is to keep damage on the boss and watch where Selene is. You must interrupt her whenever she starts channeling. Now here, you're going to see some new enemies, some Horvers, which are not too stressful, but these Lurchers are horrible. They will one-shot a DPS or a healer. They can even one-shot a tank if you don't block their heavy attacks, and they'll put nasties on the ground. Now that is actually attached to the players. You'll get a kind of a debuff on you, and you'll drop circles of negative effects on the ground. If you stand in that, you will be drained by your resources. Your stamina will just drop really, really rapidly. So move if you're inside of it. You'll drop another one. Move again. You'll drop another one until it's gone. Just don't stand in it. That is a learning curve for you, by the way. That's a mechanic that you're being taught for future encounters, shall we say. This ad pull, by the way, I've been talking over top of it, of course. It's very straightforward. You've seen this stuff before. Tank pulls everything into the middle. Everybody else keeps up heals and AoE damage and just go through the motions. There's no race for this. Just get it done in your own time. It's not that stressful. Just make sure, of course, you interrupt stuff that needs to be interrupted. And, of course, make sure your tank maintains taunts. Just one big, massive tip for everybody that is in dungeons, whether you're DPS, a healer, or whatever. Please do not run away from the ads. You will not get away from them. If they are aggro to you, they will chase you until you die or the tank taunts it. Stay close to the tank. It's a little bit easier for them to control it. This boss is quite straightforward. The dragon is in the room. It's going to charge across the room constantly, breathing fire across the ground. Just stay out of that big strip. This boss is very similar to the Lurchers we just encountered. Basically, the tank needs to hold it still, and you will get negative effects on you as other players in the group. As you can see there, the big circle. All you do is simply step out of it. Find a gap, stand in it. And in the meantime, do your damage. Now you can see the breath there. Stay away from that area. We're actually holding the boss pretty much on the spot here. If you keep it away from the middle of the room, you won't get caught out. In the meantime, you will have loads of ads in the room that need to be dealt with. So the tank mustn't spin the boss too much. Obviously has to bring the ads in, and you do need to deal with them. Some will need interrupting, some won't. But don't stand in the big circles. Once all the ads are actually down, because the boss is immune at the moment, the boss will actually come back up again, apart from the odd imp or so. Now, again, you just have to burn his health down until he hits 0, and stay out of stupid, and stay away from the dragon. It would help if you had lots of AoE in this fight, by the way, because then you can deal with the ads much faster. But don't panic, it's not the end of the world if you don't have loads of AoE. You will have stranglers in the room as well. They're relevant for later. They don't have a massive amount of health, but you will have to learn how to get rid of those quickly. Tip, as much AoE as possible. If you can kill everything at the same time rather than one after the other, that will help for a fight later on in the dungeon. The second time the boss has got into his immune phase, he's got no health, you will have to, again, kill the ads. You can see there's no negative circles on the ground because the boss isn't applying them. So take your time, relax. When he wakes up again, for the third time, this is where you have to finish him off. He will actually go from full health to 0 3 times. The third time, he's dead. As you can see here, all we're doing is keeping our feet out of the circles. We're staying away from the middle of the room, so the dragon's not even a problem. And if he does, for any reason, try to breathe on the group, all you simply have to do is get out of the way of the negative AoE. The boss can glow red at certain points and be enraged. Do not panic. As long as your tank holds their ground and make sure they maintain a taunt and keep their blocks up, you will be just fine. Yes, he does hit harder, but honestly, if it hits a DPS or a healer, you're dead anyway. If you hit the tank, you should be fine. Just don't drop your block during those moments. Key points overall is basically hold the boss still, turn it away from the group, deal with the ads, and don't stand in stupid. Now we've got an ad pull coming up, which is pretty straightforward. We've got almost all the major dangerous enemies, Horvers, spiders, stranglers, all that good stuff. A couple of Spriggans as well. Pull them into the middle, keep your AoE up, and don't run away from ads if they're chasing you. You make it very difficult for the tank if you do that, so don't run away. Stay close to the tank if you can, just don't stand in their face, obviously, because that's where the AoE from the enemy tends to be. Now, we're going to encounter an unusual fight, which doesn't actually count as a boss or anything. This particular target has a damage shield, and if you strip the damage shield, the boss, or target even, will go away. However, each one of these has their own individual mechanics. You'll see here that we get a kind of a meteor effect on each individual member. All you need to do here is step away from each other and hold block. The circles can overlap slightly, but they mustn't overlap another player physically, otherwise they'll die. It spawns 2 Frost Atros. They need to be taunted, so get them quickly as a tank. And of course, do not drop the taunt of this particular target, because it will hit the DPS and kill them. Once the damage shield is gone, you're safe. But it does apply a nasty heavy attack, so if you are tanking this, then of course make sure you block that. And if it's on a DPS or a healer, don't block it, because you'll die. You need to make sure you dodge roll that perfectly, otherwise you're in trouble. Very straightforward, however. Taunt it, hold it still, kill it. Every time the meteor comes down, spread out and block. Now, another long run here. We've got a few more ads coming. We're now going to be introduced to some new ads, which are relevant for the next boss fight in terms of their visuals. But what you need to do is understand their basic mechanics. As you can see here, we've got a Lurcher, and you can see a big AoE around these targets here. Interrupt those routes. They are very simple to kill. They don't do too much damage unless you're in the big circle of AoE, which is nasty. Most people don't see that mechanic. They just see the circle. You can, if you look carefully, see red flash and sparks coming out of them, and you can interrupt it and get rid of that AoE altogether. So for that particular pull, as you just saw, grab the Lurcher, stack it on the 2 ads, you're good to go. Another minion here, which is kill the damage shield and it's all over. Very simply put, taunt this, turn it away from the group. It will do heavy attacks, light attacks, and a bit of a cleave effect as well. As DPS and healers, just make sure you stay behind this target and it won't be a problem at all. As long as the tank always blocks, you won't have any issues. Very straightforward in comparison to the last one. The last one's actually quite harsh, especially when the Ice Atronachs come out. If you don't block those as a tank, you're dead. Another ad pool here, and you're also going to see some more of these roots. Pay attention to them. They do hit you with projectiles a bit as well. There's 3 of them in the room. There's 1 on the right and 2 on the left. If you're close to them and you're trying to get them down, especially as a melee DPS, again, make sure you interrupt them. As you can see here, bash, bash, everyone's safe. Absolutely fine. Most people fail on that. There's lots and lots of wipes that I've seen in pickup groups for this particular part of the dungeon because people don't understand that that requires an interrupt to be safe. 1 more on the side, very spread out from the rest of them actually. Quite simple. Kill it, interrupt it, job done. Now, you are going to see a giant one of those in a moment, and it doesn't have the interrupt mechanics, but it does have a nasty AoE around it, so it tells you that basically you need to stay away. You can actually range those down and not standing stupid at all, but it's kind of teaching you a lesson for standing near it is bad. Again, another Lurcher. Grab it. First of all, the tank must grab that as soon as possible. Don't run ahead of the tank, because if it hits you in any way, shape or form as a DPS or a healer, you are most likely going to die to a one-shot. Even their light attacks can kill a squishy DPS, regardless if you're a resistancer, so be very, very careful. Another long run. The dungeon is quite large. There's so much empty space. Now, another minion. You've seen a similar one to this before. This one's a dual wield instead of a two-hander or a caster. Very straightforward. Turn it away from the group, keep a taunt on it, and burn it down as and when you can. There's no rush, there's no panic. It's just kill the damage shield, and it will sit down. Again, as DPS and healers, do not stand in front of it because you will take cleave damage. Now we are coming up to another boss, and this is the giant version of what you've seen already, the roots. And this is very straightforward, but people make a bit of a mess of it. As you can see, it has a very similar mechanic to the last ones, where the big circle around it you don't want to stand in. Now, instead of interrupting it to get rid of it, we do have a mechanic in the fight that will get rid of it. So, stay out of the blue stuff because it'll kill you. These Lurchers must die, and they will fire off nasty AoEs on the ground from the root, and they will stomp the ground, which comes from them. Also, the tank will be hit with individual attacks as well, which can be reflected and or blocked against. Also the cleave as well, stay out of it. Every time this guy stomps, it will put a big blue circle on the ground, as you can see there, which will remain on the ground, and you don't want to stand in it because you'll lose health with damage over time. Stay out of the pops from the root, stay away from the ad. Once the ad is dead, there'll be a synergy on the ground, and a new ad will spawn. Whoever has the synergy runs into the circle and activates it, and as you can see, this negative AoE goes away. this is your opportunity to damage the root itself, or the cancroid, however you want to pronounce it. Now, during this, the tank needs to make sure they've grabbed the new ad. Otherwise, it's going to one-shot someone. So as soon as the ad dies, grab the new one because it's going to spawn instantly. Again, the easiest way to manage this is, of course, to stay away from the big AoEs. But if the tank moves the boss every time it stamps his foot, that will get everyone out of that big nasty on the ground, and everyone's safe again and can continue to damage it. As you can see here, we are in a big blue circle. We've moved out. After the first phase, however, you are going to get stranglers in the room, and the longer the fight goes on, the more you will get and the more overwhelmed you will get, so be careful. Now the ad is down, but we can't damage the root until the synergy is picked up and then activated inside the blue circle. Pro tip, by the way, if you are the person that picks up the synergy and the ad tries to heavy attack you, whether you're a tank or not, blocking or not, it will kill you, because holding that synergy makes you susceptible to those attacks. So whoever's picking up the synergy, make sure you haven't got aggro off the ad. And if you do, make sure you dodge roll that heavy. So very simply put, go round the room in a nice circle every time he stomps, stay out of stupid, and if you get overwhelmed with stranglers, kill them. 3 phases of that, even if you've got low DPS, is absolutely fine. Any more than 3 phases, you're going to have to kill a lot more stranglers than you want to. But another good tip, by the way, when the new ad spawns, make sure the tank puts it on top of the root or the tree, and then you will actually do passive AoE damage, hopefully, to the new ad, making your kite around the room, killing the ad phase coming up, much less stressful because it's already half health. Here is a nasty pull, by the way. Two Lurchers at once. This can wipe a tank. Be very careful. The tank must go in first and grab both of them. If a DPS gets caught by any of them, you're screwed. It's a very simple pull, but the tank must get in there first and taunt those 2 primary targets. Again, another run up some more stairs. Loads of space to run around in here. This is where your speed run comes in. It's not killing the ads or killing the bosses. It's actually the run up the mountain. It takes a long time. This can be pulled into 2 sections, or you can pull them both at the same time. So there are 2 lurchers separate, but we've pulled them together here. Make sure they're turned away from the group at all costs. Stay out of the stupid circles because they will drain you and they will kill you. And of course, in the meantime, just focus the big guys. The small ones can die at their own pace. You've normally got enough AoE to cover those passively anyway, even with a low DPS group. But the 2 Lurchers must be focused. If you need to, save your ultimates for those ad pulls and nuke the Lurchers as and when you can, because they are a problem. They hit very, very hard. They're also going to be in the last boss fight as well. Another minion here. Turn it away from the group. Don't stand in its face. You don't have to use your ultimates here. In fact, you can build up ultimates on these because they are just there until the damage shield goes away. There's no enrage mechanics or anything stressful at all. In fact, it feels like they were there for you to build ultimate on. Large pull here, loads of wasps. Pull them into the middle as usual. AoE's on the ground, heals on the ground. Don't panic and run away. As you can see here, we are getting a lot of Horvers. These are really important because the next boss fight, the Horvers are a primary target. Not necessarily to kill, but you must interact with them. That will become more apparent once we get there. Now, this next minion you've seen before, this is actually the first one you encountered when we came into the dungeon. You must get rid of its damage shield, but you must also follow the mechanics. If you get caught out, you are dead. So, when he brings down the meteor, spread out and block. Do not overlap those circles so that they touch other players. The Ice Atros must be taunted ASAP, otherwise they will kill the group. They hit very, very hard. And the rest of the time it's just following through the mechanics. So just keep your damage up, get rid of that damage shield, and of course block when the meteors come down. The tank will have to block a nasty heavy attack occasionally, so be ready for that. If you don't block it, you're in trouble. Also, there is an interruptible mechanic as well where you can just bash the target and it won't happen, but we didn't get to see it there because we killed it too quick. If you've got low DPS, you will see more mechanics, but it's not the end of the world. There is no enrage or anything like that. Just keep doing what you're doing. This pull is very quick. Everything kind of comes in all together. So just keep your AoE up. Remember to interrupt the spiders if they try and feed. And chain them in if you can as the tank, because obviously you don't want to spread out too much while you're fighting. It's a lot easier to keep everything kind of condensed in the middle. Now, this is where things start getting a little bit trickier. After this particular minion, actually, because we have a boss that is not necessarily a pug killer, but more a pug stopper. So this minion you've seen before, two-hander, does heavy attacks, tank keeps it turned away from the group. Very straightforward, get rid of the damage shield. I would encourage you to take your time on this guy to build your ultimates. Now, there are going to be adds in this room that the tank needs to control. I would recommend that you keep those adds near the group as much as possible. There are going to be Horvers in the room that I would recommend your healer pays attention to. So, there is going to be an NPC in the middle, Selene, and she is trying to make the spiders, green spiders, crawl up the wall towards Maarselok. And if you annoy him enough, he will come down so you can hit him. However, there are two major problems, excluding the adds that will spawn, the skeleton stuff and the Spriggans and such. There's going to be Horvers in the room trying to reach Selene. So your healer can stay out in the field, keep the heals up, and as you can see there, stand near the Horver and it will pop. If you stand near the Horver and it pops, then you just need to pay attention for the next ones. If you don't and it stuns Selene, she can't cast spiders to bring Maarselok down. In the meantime, there are stranglers all around this particular area that will constantly spawn like whack-a-mole enemies where you have to keep hitting them and knocking them down. And if you don't get rid of them, they will kill the spiders that Selene is trying to aim at Maarselok. So, your focus here is one person in the middle of the room standing near Horvers to make them pop, and everyone else getting rid of stranglers and adds. Now, Maarselok will come down once you get rid of enough stranglers, then you can do your damage to him. Do as much as you can here. I would recommend your ultimates and all that good stuff to try and push him as far as possible. Bear in mind, throughout the fight, you will hear him shout Fusroda, and you will need to block, otherwise you'll get flung across the room. You will have seen that already, but that is something you have to pay attention to. We do have adds, of course, but the tank can bring them in towards Maarselok. Now, when Maarselok goes up, a Lurcher will spawn, and the tank needs to grab it straight away. Bring that over to the new location where the stranglers are, and focus it. Keep your AoE down so the stranglers can go down. Make sure your healer or whoever's assigned for the middle can keep those Horvers away from Selene by just running into them and making them blow up. And of course, focus what you're doing. Don't stand in stupid. Block the first Rodar, which I didn't there, and stay out of the circles. Now, you can avoid the Lurcher if you want, but if it hits people, it's going to die. Or you're going to die, rather. And if you go too fast and you don't kill the Lurcher, you could end up with two of them. So it's really risky. Maarselok comes down again once you've got rid of enough stranglers, once they're not being distracted, and then you will have to fight him again. So, ultimates, do as much as you can, and do damage to Maarselok until he goes up again. Now, there is a cap for each percentage of health, but if you don't push him far enough, he'll go back up after a time anyway. Every time he goes up, he'll bring a Lurcher out, you've got new stranglers to deal with. So, to keep this moving, basically, there is a new spawn location for stranglers every phase, which is set in stone, and you basically need to get Maarselok to 50%. So, kill the stranglers, Maarselok comes down, hit him really hard. Kill the Lurcher, kill the adds, kill the stranglers, Maarselok comes down, rinse, repeat. In the meantime, whoever is assigned to the Horvers that are in the middle of the room going towards Selene, make sure you always pop them so that she doesn't get stunned. If you successfully make sure that the Horvers don't touch Selene, and you get rid of the stranglers that are getting rid of the spiders, this fight is much, much faster. However, if the person in the middle screws up, or you don't get rid of the problem, you are going to be here for a very, very long time. Now, the biggest tip I can give you for this fight is stop using single target dummy smasher setups. What you need to do is bring as much area of effect as possible and cover as many enemies as possible to keep those stranglers down. As long as they're not hitting the spiders, and as long as the Horvers are not touching Selene, this can be a very quick fight. On my live streams, if you've seen this fight before, you may have seen two different variations of this. One where it can be done in a couple of minutes, another time where it may take half an hour to get through one phase. So the choice of how fast this can take or how long it can take is honestly on you and how you build your group. You will need a lot of area of effect for this. You don't need massive damage, you just need spread out damage, if that makes any sense whatsoever. If everything can go down together, regardless of how long it takes, it's a lot easier than killing one thing at a time. So all we're doing here now is basically playing whack-a-mole with the stranglers while the tank keeps the adds on us, while we avoid stupid on the ground, and of course the Horvers are being basically popped in the middle so that Selene doesn't stop annoying the dragon. Now he's down for the third time. He can go up again and you'll have to kill him, well, hit him again afterwards, but there is a kind of a cap here. So if you can get him to 50% on this phase, then he is basically done here. If you don't get him to 50% by the time the timer's over and he goes back up flapping his wings again, you'll have to go for another lap, basically. You'll get another Lurcher, you'll get more ads, you'll get more Stranglers. It's rinse repeat until he hits 50%. You can do it in 3 phases, but if it doesn't happen there, you can do it in another one, or sometimes you have to do one more. Depends on your group. But you must focus, keep up the heals, keep up the taunts, and keep up as much area of effect as possible. Remember, Horvers must pop, Stranglers must die. You can make that easier on yourself or more difficult on yourself, depending on how awkward you are with your group. Don't come in there with just single target. Have as much AoE as you can. Again, it's not a DPS race as such. You can take your time, but make it easy on yourself and bring lots of AoE damage. Now, we are on the final climb up the mountain. We're going to have a few ad pulls here, and now we're going to be introduced to a new mechanic. Now, this is relevant for the basic version of the last boss, but also somewhat to hard mode. Hard mode variations can be very different to this. See this circle here? If someone is cursed, they need to go over to the synergy and activate it. You have 20 seconds to get rid of that curse, otherwise a Lurcher is going to spawn out. And that hurts. So bear in mind that is very important. Ad pull is quite simple, put everything in together, keep your AoE up. If you've just completed the last fight, you know you've got enough AoE to deal with ad pulls like this anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. This is not a very stressful pull, but watch your feet because there is stupid on the ground. Also, watch for anyone who gets cursed. You need to try and find another synergy, and there's one just at the top of the stairs here. Watch out for that spider, by the way. Sometimes he's forgotten about, so you have to pull him in and finish him. But wherever Selene is, wherever these green circles are, that is your cleanse pad. And there'll be several of them up the hill, so pay attention to them. Otherwise, like I said, you will get a Lurcher come out from that, and it hits really, really hard. There are Lurchers on the way as well, so you don't want to add to that. This particular dude here, you've seen him before. Build up your ultimate on him if you really want to. You just have to get his damage shield down. But be aware, you can still get cursed, as you can see there. Bob is actually cursed. He's got 20 seconds to get rid of that. Otherwise, we're having a Lurcher in the fight as well, which can be messy. That dude and a Lurcher on a tank is quite rough. Stay away from whoever takes a synergy, of course, because you can get stunned by those negative AoE effects that come out. Another huge run up the mountain. Again, your speed run depends on how quickly you can close the gap on these large areas. It's not so much the actual fights themselves. As you can see, I'm cursed. But we have a big ad pull coming up. Tank needs to grab the Lurcher and turn it away from the group and then manage the rest. I need to get rid of this, otherwise we're having another Lurcher. You can use your ultimates on these if you want, but I would normally recommend not using it on this particular pull, because in a moment you're going to get 2 at once, which is really bad. So hold your ultimates there if you can. Make sure, again, you do make a habit of having your tank go first if you can help it. As you can see, yeah, I'm up front, but I'm also waiting for the tank to kind of lead once we find the ads. Be very aware of this particular target. You know that he's a caster. You know that he drops meteors. You know you got to spread out and block. That is the worst one. He's the most dangerous of all these little minions. The ice atros, make sure you're blocking as a DPS or a healer as they spawn. The heavy attacks will kill you, but their initial light attacks can almost kill you, so you want to block those while the tank grabs them. Here we realise the tank is actually cursed, so he has to go and cleanse. Otherwise, we're going to get in trouble in the next ad pull, because it is quite horrendous. We have lots of little tiny ads. We've got Spriggans, Spiders, Wasps, all that good stuff. And we've got 2 Lurchers at once. So you're against the clock right now. You've got to kill these Lurchers and pay attention to your curses. There's going to be a lot going on here. With all the stupid that's going to be put on the ground, people usually fail at cleansing on this particular part of the fight because they just get overwhelmed with mechanics. It's not that bad, but if you're new to this, it can seem to be a little bit of a mess. So the tank needs to grab these 2 Lurchers as usual and turn them away from the group. You need to pay attention to your feet and not stay in the drain circles. And of course, watch out if you get cursed. You will glow and you'll have a purple debuff in your buff timers. As you can see here, we've literally let Bob basically consume the whole curse, and there's the Lurcher. So if that happens during that ad pull, you're going to end up with 3 of them. You really do not want that to happen. So for demonstration purposes, that's what you're looking for. The other player will glow. They'll have a purple debuff on them, which you can even see when you highlight them. They have to go and cleanse it. We are almost there. Almost to the top of the mountain. We've got a couple more minions to deal with. Well, 1 in fact. 2 of you don't cleanse your curses. This one is very, very simple. dual wield with cleaves and heavy attacks. You don't have to nuke this. You can save ultimate and build it up on this particular fight so you're ready for a bit of burst on the last fight. But the last fight has quite a lot of health, so it's not going to do that much. But at least you're entering the fight with your ultimates ready. Now, we are going to activate the hard mode, and this is going to take some explaining. It's not too stressful. On normal version of this, on the normal veteran version of this, the mechanics I'm about to explain don't exist. Basically, if you don't cleanse, you get a Lurcher, and that's pretty much it. However, you are now presented with 3 pads in the room. You can go from left to the back of the room to the right if you want in a clockwise rotation and count them as 1, 2, and 3 if you want. That will help. But that is what you're looking at. There's 3 pads. They look like cleanse pads. Now, if the curse happens, which it will, Selene will be in the middle of the room. She needs to be dealt with. She has a damage shield. Get rid of the damage shield, and then you need to decide who is cleansing, because everyone will have a prompt for it. Now, the rule for this, we'll give Fire credit for this particular statement, is majority wins. So, you need to communicate with your group. One of the pads will light up, and you'll be able to see which one it is, and you all call out the number that you can see, 1, 2, or 3. If 2 people, not the tank, if 2 people have one number and one of the others has another, the majority wins. So if your 2 DPS can see pad 2 and your healer can see pad 3, your healer is the dummy one. That one needs to run over and press the number 2. So whoever's got the wrong one needs to go over to the majority pad. However, if they are all the same, the tank needs to go to the one that is called to be the same for everybody. So, if there is a difference, the one with a different one goes to the pad everyone can see. If there's no difference, the tank needs to go and cleanse on that pad. Rewind that and repeat it as many times as you like. That's how it works. I will demonstrate it, obviously, in the fight. Now, what does help if you assign these from left to right as 1, 2, and 3, so the one on the left, the one at the back, and the one on the right, put your tank on number 2 and hold the boss facing that pad. Then when the charge happens, go to pad number 1 and just go backwards and forwards whenever you need to. That will make more sense once we start the fight. As you can see the glowing orb on the ground there, that is actually how you activate hard mode, and you will need to interact with that during the fight as well when it comes to the cleanse phase. Now, the cleanse phase will be presented to you after you've knocked down Selene's damage shield, after you've taken a synergy off the ball. If you don't take the synergy, you won't see which pad you need. Hopefully that made sense. Let's see what happens. Now, rule number 1 is do not panic. There is no execute and rage mechanic. You just have to keep doing what you're doing. You can take as long as you like. Rule number 2 is do not stand by the side of his wings. So, Selene will need to be interrupted throughout the fight just like she is on the first boss, so make sure that someone has got that covered. Make sure someone is keeping eyes on Selene at all times. You can see she's on my right there. You have to interrupt her. In the meantime, the dragon will put down loads of nasties on the ground. Be aware of that and stay out of them. When he charges, you'll see that he goes towards the direction of the tank, kind of off-center. That is why the tank is pivoting kind of between pad 1 and 2. Backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. In the meantime, we get the hell out of the way when he charges. Whenever the dragon moves his position, always stay kind of mid with him or to the left or the right. Don't stand near his wings. As you can see here, Selene has called for some trouble. We need to get the damage shield off, which we've done. Then we need to find this synergy. Once we activate it, we can see a lit up pad. We all call our numbers. No one presses anything. Remember, majority wins. If 2 of you have one pad and 1 of you has another, the one that's got the wrong one needs to go and cleanse on the majority pad. If you've all got the same, the tank needs to go and cleanse. That is very simple. Now, the rest of the time, mind your feet, keep your damage up. If he breathes fire, you must block. If he flaps wings at you, you got to block or dodge roll it. Don't stand there. If he also puts adds in the room, which he will, this is where your DPS need to stop focusing the boss and just get rid of the adds. Again, he's charging. We have got way out of the way. Yeah, you can block as a tank and you can even dodge roll as a DPS, but it's really risky. If you die here, you're in trouble, because if you die, block the breath, by the way, or dodge it, the person who is dead will be encased in roots, and they will have to have the roots killed in order for them to be able to be rezzed. So that's very important. Don't die, and if you do, you need to make sure that DPS can get rid of that. Selene is interrupting again. You can see we've got our healer on the interrupts, but she's called for us. We need to get rid of that damage shield, knock it down, pick up the synergy. I can see I've got pad number 3. Everybody else calls their numbers. If we've all got the same, the tank needs to cleanse. If someone's got a different pad, then call the one that the majority has got, and they have to run and cleanse on it. If you get the wrong pad, you will die, and a Lurcher will come out. Apart from that, it's rinse repeat. Whenever Selene does her interrupt mechanic, which you can see there, she needs to be bashed. Whenever the explosions land on the ground, you need to get out of it. Whenever the boss charges, find a space and get out of the way. And whenever there are adds, kill them. It's rinse repeat. This doesn't change throughout the rest of the fight. So now we're just going to work on tips. Always focus the adds. When the boss moves like this, breath, obviously block it, but stay inside his kind of frontal arc. You need to make sure that you don't stay either side of the wings. When he does his Phosphor die, you can block it or get out of it. It's very easy to see. And just relax. Keep your heals up. Keep your AoE damage up at most, because you must get rid of these adds. And then every time Selene is attackable, so when the bloke's calling, get her damage shield down, pick up the synergy, and go for the pads. Again, remember, I can see pad 3 there. If everyone else has got pad 3, the tank needs to cleanse. If 2 people can see pad 2, for example, and I can only see pad 3, I've got the wrong one. I need to go to the one they called. You can do that in chat, you can do that in voice or whatever. You can do that even in your group chat if you want to. Or have an emote that you all agree to, which is 1, 2, and 3. Yes, no, and hello. I don't know. Whatever works for you. Just make sure that you communicate. Maarselok is charging. Always just find a gap away from where he's charging to, and it's a really safe mechanic. You don't have to do anything really stressful. Now, yes, he is an execute as such, depending on your skills. Remember, block the flames or dodge it. But he does have a lot of health. At 29% health, he was at 7 mil. That's a lot. So you're not going to kill this within a few split seconds. So make sure, above all, you do not panic. He doesn't enrage, so keep up the mechanics. Adds first. Make sure you interrupt Selene. Make sure you follow the pad mechanic. That's it. The rest of this, apart from watching your feet and keeping those heals and damage up, can take as long as you like. If you have 5k DPS, as long as you can kill those adds, you will still do this. It's not a race. But obviously the more you've got, the easier it becomes, because then you don't have to have the adds in the room for too long. I am using caltrops in this particular fight on purpose on a stam DPS because I want as much AoE in a big space as possible. And of course the extra fracture really, really helps. But whatever you've got to your disposal at the time, whether you're a mag DPS or a stam DPS, you want to put down AoE and try and line up on as many enemies as possible. Charging again. As you can see, the tank is literally going from pad 1 to pad 2. Pad 1 to pad 2. He's kind of hovering on 2 the majority of the time, but the direction he's facing is between the 2 of them. We've never once had him go anywhere near pad 3, which is great because that means that he's always aimed away from us when we are trying to get away from his charge. And it also gives us that room to get to Selene every time she is attackable. And of course that gives us a little bit of freedom as far as the size of the room is concerned, rather than everything being a complete cluster. Remember, when he breathes fire, you must block or dodge roll, depending on how your resources are. You must interrupt Selene. You must get rid of the adds. You are literally watching us rinse repeat the entire mechanics over and over and over now. Just remember, and I can't stress this enough, only one person needs to take the cleanse, and it has to make sure it's the right person. If you've all got the same one, it's the tank. If one of you's got a different one, follow what the majority has called. Very simple. It's quite easy to mess it up though, so don't worry if you don't get it right the first time. It does take a little bit of practice. And a bit of discipline as well, because it can get a little bit panicky. Again though, bear in mind, there is no execute mechanic. There is no enrage. Stay away from those wings. Bob just stood in the wings and died. However, we kept this because we're going to show a mechanic here. You can see that he's covered in roots. His body cannot be rezzed right now. So I have to kill this and stay alive and deal with adds to try and break him out of these roots while not getting killed by the boss in order to even get near the res. So what we opted to do here, Templar passives are much faster at resin. Told Super to put as many dots on the ground as possible as far as heals are concerned, hots rather, and do the resin because it's quicker than me. In the meantime, I would throw out a vigor for him and myself and deal with the adds while the res is coming in. In the spare of the moment, those are the sort of things that you might have to deal with if you have to res, but hopefully you don't die on it and it becomes a much smoother fight for you. The boss is 1.2 million health, but we still follow the mechanics. You don't have to go for the nuke. You have to finish what it is you're doing. So there, you saw me go for an unlit pad. That is because I could see the false one, and the majority could see the one I needed to go for. Hopefully that made enough sense. But the boss fight is now over, and there you go. All we have to do is, once you've got one phase down, for example, when he charges and does the Selene mechanic, and then you've done the pads. Once that's done once, you can repeat it all day long. So hopefully that helped, hopefully it wasn't too boring, hopefully it wasn't too complicated, hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach that particular dungeon. Don't worry, the non-hard mode doesn't have the majority win stuff, it just has hit the boss, kill the ads, there's no Selene fight, there's no roots covering the dead bodies, you just hit it, avoid the breath, avoid the charge. That's it. If you get cursed, you cleanse. Remember, there's no execute panic, there's no execute phase, so just because the health is low doesn't mean you have to change stuff. Keep doing the mechanics and you will do it no matter how much damage you have. So, first of all, thank you all very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. And if you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. And, of course, hit the bell so you know when I upload new videos. Also, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and, of course, the website XynodeGaming.com, where all the written guides are, including this one. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.